Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 24 from the Road to Latin textbook and translate the first story, which is called De Principibus Romanis. Now, in this chapter, we're coming back to third declension nouns, so we're going to do a little bit of review on it, but I'm going to move a little bit more quickly than I normally do with the grammar, just because it gets a little repetitive over the next few chapters. But like I always tell you, before you dive into the story, if you want to see it in a different way or just get more resources on the textbook, feel free to take a look at my site. If you go to chapter 24 on the Nova Latin site, you'll see all my stuff, grammar notes, vocab help, games, translations, just anything that you might need. And for these stories, one thing I have is the color coding, which you see in my videos, right? So I always find it useful to give this to my students. Seeing the cases in different colors helps you identify them pretty quickly. So it's just another way to see the story and understand it. So it's there for you if you need it. Feel free to take a look. Like I said, though, the first thing that we usually do in these videos when we start a new chapter is take a look at the grammar together. But before that, you always want to make sure that you have the vocab under control. So if you can find a vocab list, like I said, if you want to go to my website, you can find one there for you with a Quizlet, if that helps you practice. But one way or another, you want to make sure that you have the vocab under control and you feel really confident in it, because it's very difficult to translate these stories if you don't know what the words mean. But the second thing you got to do is make sure that you have the grammar under control and that you've looked at it, right? This way you can use the story to practice the different grammar techniques. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, chapter 24 is really repeating the idea of third declension nouns. So we're going to move a little quickly through it, but I just want to give you a quick overview to make sure that you're on the right track. So just to refresh your memory, we've been dealing with third declension nouns, and we've been saying that in Latin, all the different nouns that we have, right, there's thousands of them, they all fall into groups, which we call declensions. And the reason third declension is a little bit different and we've held off is because the spelling just looks a little weird. But in general, these nouns have a genitive singular of is, right? They all do. That's not a general statement. So for instance, you'd see dux ducus, which means leader, right? The is tells you it's a third declension noun. But the trick is that there's not a set pattern in the nominative singular. And that's what this chapter is really doing. It's showing you different examples of third declension nouns. I believe they're focusing on the ones that end in R. But it's not really necessary to break it up that much. All you need to know is that third declension nouns, they have a genitive singular of is, and their nominative singular could be a bunch of different things. There's no set pattern, so it really doesn't matter. Now, here's the chart that we did in the last chapter, and it still applies to this one, right? We're really looking all the way over to the right at third declension nouns. You can see that they could be masculine, feminine, or neuter. I think there's a typo there. There should be an end dot as well. And what we're really trying to get at is this idea that in the nominative singular, where you see a dash, that's the idea. There's no pattern, right? But it's not too difficult to understand these, especially if you've already done the previous chapter. It should make a lot of sense to you. If you have any questions at all of the grammar, I'd encourage you to go back to chapter 23 and really dive through the grammar notes, or let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you. But again, this chapter is really nothing new. It's just continuing what you've already seen. So it's a very, very quick snapshot, but hopefully, like I said, this is review and it's nothing you really need to master now that you're off into chapter 24. But what we want to do is just dive into the story and really pick up where these third declension nouns are happening in context so we can recognize them and translate them. So that's what we're going to do right now. So again, if you haven't learned the vocab, pause the video, go learn the vocab first, or else you're really going to have a tough time with it. If you feel really good about the vocab, make sure you have the grammar, and then you'll be ready to translate this story. Now, before we read it, again, one last note I always tell you, you don't want to just read the story in your head. You want to read it aloud. So if you can find someone from class, a classmate, friend, whoever, read the story out loud to them and then have them read it back to you. This way you're practicing your speaking, your pronunciation, and your listening skills when they read it back. It's really valuable. You never want to shut off those modes of learning. And you don't want to just translate this in your head. It's not as effective. Okay, so if you've been struggling in Latin, right, I would encourage you to read it out loud, right? It might unlock it for you. But one way or another, once you hit that place and you feel really good, as long as your translation matches pretty close to what I have here, you're in a good spot. So the story starts like this. You have in principio, Roma a regibus regebatur. So in the beginning, right, in principio. In the beginning, Roma, it's just the city of Rome. You have regebatur, it's imperfect tense, passive voice. So it's was ruled, right? Rome was ruled, and we're looking we have the passive voice verb, you're looking for an ablative to tell you who's doing it. Here we have the ablative of agent, right? Regibus, it's talking about people, by kings, right? That's why we have the preposition a there. So you're saying in the beginning, Rome was ruled by kings, which is true. Then you have Primus Rex erat Romulus. So the first king, the Primus Rex, right, was Romulus. Erat is just imperfect tense of the verb to be. So Romulus, the famous Romulus from the Romulus and Remus story. And again, if you've never looked at sort of the history of Rome, look that culture up, and this story will make more sense to you. But Romulus was the first king. Okay. Then you have Frater Romuli erat Remus. So the brother of Romulus, right? The Frater Romuli. The brother of Romulus was Remus. Romulus et Remus erant Gemini. So Romulus and Remus were Gemini. They were twins, right? And this all goes into the story if you've ever heard this before. Then you have Pater Romuli et Fratris Remi Deus Mars, Mater Rea Silvia era. So you're saying the father of Romulus, the Pater Romuli, and of his is really kind of the missing word here, of his brother Remus, Fratris Remi. Erat was, you have to go all the way to the end, was Deus Mars, the god Mars, right? That's their famous father. Their divine father is Mars, okay? Then you have Mater, and you're implying the word there. So their mother, Erat, right? Erat is kind of working two ways in this sentence. Erat, Rhea Silvia. Their mother was Rhea Silvia, famous character from Roman mythology. Again, you should look this story up if you don't know it already. Then you have Romae erant statuae patris martis et matris rei Silviae et fratrum. So you're saying in Rome. So Romae here, that AE ending, right? It kind of looks like it would be genitive singular or maybe nominative plural, which doesn't make sense because there's not two Romes. This is the locative. So you're saying in Rome, right? It's really telling you inside the city. There were statuae, there were statues of Patris Martis, of the father Mars, meaning of their father, we're talking about Romulus and Remus's father Mars, and of their mother Matris, their mother Rhea Silvia, right? Rhea Silviae here, and of the brothers Fratrum, right? That's genitive plural. And again, this is a lot of repetition on third declension nouns: mother, right? Pater, mater, rex, frater. All these words are third declension to help you really see them. So it's saying in Rome there was, there were statues of all these different characters: Mars, Rhea Silvia, and the brothers. Then you have Romulus erat rex bonus et a Romanis laudabatur. So you're saying Romulus was a rex bonus. He was a good king. And laudabatur, he was praised, imperfect tense, passive voice, by the Romans, right? There's your ablative of agent, a Romanis. It's just ablative plural. So he was praised by the Romans. And I'll leave you to investigate whether or not you agree with that statement, but that's a side note. Then you have erat septem reges Romani. So there were seven, septem is your number. Remember the numbers after 1, 2, 3, and then a couple later on, like 500. They don't have endings, so septem is always septem, meaning seven. So you're saying there were seven kings, right, reges, and they're described as Romani, seven Roman kings, which is true. The seven kings of Rome is the famous story of how Rome started, right? Then you have postea erat consules. So afterward, there were erat consules. There were consuls, another third declension noun. Then you have consul Romanus a populo Romano delegebator. So the Roman consul, the consul Romanus, he was chosen. Delegebator is imperfect tense, passive voice. And again, we're looking for the ablative here, and you have the ablative of agent. He was chosen by the populo Romano, by the Roman people. Okay, which is true. The consul is elected, right? The transition they're talking about is when the Romans go from kings to a res publica, right? A republic with this elected official system, right? Which is what influences a lot of the world today, including the United States, right? So again, if you don't know the sort of backstory, the history of Rome, you should look that up, and it'll explain what the story's hinting at here. Then you have imperium consulis erat maximum. So the power, the imperium, the authority almost, the power of the consul was very great, was maximum, right? It was very great, which is true. There's two consuls ruling at any time in the Roman Republic, and they have basically all the power, right? There's other kind of checks and balances involved, but they are the leader of the republic, the two of them. Then you have duo consules quotanis delegebantur et civitatem regebant rather. So you're saying two consuls, right? Duo consules. So two consuls delegebantur, they were chosen or elected, you might say, quotanis yearly, right? This is the system the Romans had. Every year you switch out the two consuls. It's all a reaction against kings. They're trying to prevent anyone from being a king again. So the two consuls, they were chosen every year, yearly, quotanis, and regebant, they ruled, or they were ruling, the civitatem, the state, meaning like the government. Okay. Then you have postea imperatores Romam regebant. So you're saying afterward, emperors, imperatores, right? Emperors ruled regebant. It's imperfect. You could say they were ruling or ruled Rome, right? So we go from kings to consuls to emperors. Imperator Clarus era Augustus Caesar. So you're saying a famous emperor, an Imperator Clarus, right? A famous emperor was Augustus Caesar, Augustus Caesar, right? This is the nephew, right? The adopted son of Julius Caesar. Then you have, and he is Rome's first emperor, by the way. Then you have Romae est magna statua imperatoris Augusti Caesaris. So you're saying in Rome, again, there's Romae. When you're talking about the name of a city, that AE ending in first declension is really locative here. In Rome, there is a magna statua. There is a great statue, or a large statue of the emperor, Augustus Caesar, right? All those words are genitive. It's telling you who the statue is of. Okay, so hopefully that story made sense. Again, these next few are going to be a little repetitive because it's just hammering home third declension nouns, but it gives you a lot of practice on these because there is a really big variety of what these third declension nouns look like in the nominative singular. So this is a good chance to practice it and just feel really comfortable with it. If you have any questions at all, let me know. Put them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help. But again, like I said, as long as your translation is pretty close, it doesn't have to be exactly what I said, but pretty close to it, you can feel pretty good that you're in a good spot moving forward with this chapter. Good luck.